In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, a lot of bug types have been buffed and nerfed. This video will be spoiler free of new Pokemon, but it will contain one or two new moves and abilities. Scizor now has access to close combat. Forretress now learns body press and can become a sweeper thanks to iron defense. They gave Masquerain Hurricane, which can be scary when used with Quiver Dance. Kleavor's ability was changed to sharpness, which boosts the power of its cutting type moves. And Vespiquen now has access to spikes. Let's take a closer look at all the bug type buffs and nerfs in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So Scyther and Scizor both get close combat now. This is such a huge buff because previously Scyther's physical fighting move pool was Brick Break, and Scizor had to use either Brick Break or Sewer Power. And Sewer Power isn't bad, but lowering your attack and defense every single time versus just lowering your defenses while keeping your attack static is so nice for both of these Pokemon. I could see something like Choice Band on both Scyther and Scizor coming back. Scyther obviously having that base 105 speed, and you also see that base 110 attack. So I could easily see it running something like Choice Band with close combat, U-turn. I apologize for this. I have it on Hackmon's Cup for some reason. But with close combat, U-turn, and then your other moves, it kind of depends because usually you'd have Dual Wing Beat or Bug Bite here. But unfortunately, part of the nerfs that both Scyther and Scizor received was that they don't have Dual Wing Beat, which is really big on Scyther specifically because of the lack of tech. It had Technician boosted, right? It was probably one of the best Dual Wing Beat users, period, just because of Technician. But you do have Aerial Ace, which becomes 90 base power with Technician still, and it lost Bug Bite, and Bug Bite again another big one because 90 base power as well. It also lost Knockoff, and Knockoff is another big one, allowing it to hit Pokemon like H-Slash, but you can definitely still use something like this on Scyther with close combat, U-turn, Aerial Ace, and then your final move kind of just depends on it too. They lost Roost too, so they don't really have recovery anymore either. So maybe if you don't even want to run Choice Band on this, you can run the Heavy Duty Boots so you don't take Stealth Rock, and then a more offensive variant would work like this. A Violite would also, or Eviolite, however you want to say it, will work as well. Just something like this to kind of take advantage of the fact that Scyther has high speed and high attack. Again, losing Dual Wing Beat and Bug Bite and Roost are big nerfs for Scyther, but close combat is such a big plus on choice sets, both Choice Scarf, Choice Band, and even offensive SD sets with Heavy Duty Boots, because now it can hit Steel types with real damage, right? So Scizor, like I said, has close combat. Losing Roost and Knockoff specifically are super big for Scizor. Scizor is one of the premier bugs because it only has one weakness, right? Bug Steel only has a fire weakness. You resist and you're neutral to most other types. Beautiful for Scizor's defensive typing as well. One of the few Pokemon that can take on Tapu Lele in the entire game. It's also, like, losing Knockoff means you can't get rid of items, Heavy Duty Boots, and things like that. But Scizor does have a lot for its offensive positions because offensively, Scizor just got a lot better with close combat. So, close combat's beautiful. Like I mentioned, you don't have to use that. Close combat, the damage difference versus something like Heatran or just in general being spam can be awesome on Choice Band sets. And Scizor still does have access to Bullet Punch, skill U-turn, and then your last move can really be whatever. You don't have Knockoff anymore. If you really, really want to run a move, I'm sure this Mon still learns like Night Slash or anything if you want to be able, or even like Assurance if it still learns this. And Assurance is pretty cool because let's say the way Assurance works is it doubles if the target was damaged that turn. So if a Pokemon switches in, let's say Aegislash comes in on Scizor because it resists Bug and Steel. So not terrible. If Aegislash took Stealth Rock damage as it switched in or Spike damage or whatever, Assurance is now 120 base power. And obviously with Technician, I'm pretty sure there's a boost there that gets calculated as well. I could be wrong about that part, but I'm pretty sure there's a Technician boost that I think it gets calculated before Assurance thing. So that's pretty cool. Quick Attack is also another option as well. And this is a really, really, really good Scizor set in my opinion. Just being able to spam. But Swords Dance Scizor got some pretty big buffs. So let's talk a little bit about this. So two other moves that Scizor got, and I guess I didn't actually talk about it. I could have actually mentioned it with Scyther too, but I think it's a little bit better on Scizor specifically just because of its ability to set up easier due to its resistances. So a Swords Dance set can now use Trailblaze, and you might be wondering, well, what are you talking about? So Trailblaze is a new move in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that it's Flame Charge, but for grass types. It's 50 base power, which means that with Technician, what happens? It gets boosted to 75 base power. So it's 75 base power with Technician, and it raises Scizor's speed +1. Now you might be wondering, well, okay, well, why do I need grass coverage on Scizor? One of the best SD Scizor counters in lower tiers is something like Quagsire, as it has Unaware, but I have a 4 times effective move that does with a Life Orb, it basically kills Quagsire, right? With a Life Orb, I think Stealth Rock, with Life Orb and Stealth Rock is like a guarantee kill. I think you're doing about 97, 98% minimum. It's also a pretty big buff for Scizor because water types don't have access to Scald anymore in this generation, right? At least for till Pokemon Home, though there is a lot of confirmation that says Pokemon Home won't be giving back old moves to Pokemon anyway. But water types do not have Scald. So Scizor can actually safely Swords Dance in front of water types that are going for Surf because there's no fear of it being burnt. And it's kind of similar to how Garchomp runs Swords Dance Scale Shot, or ran Swords Dance Scale Shot, because there's no Scale Shot in this game, right? You Swords Dance up and you go for the move that's not only going to attack the bulky waters in front of you, but also raise your speed at the same time. And the fact that it's Technician boosted is awesome, so it makes Scizor that much scarier. I could easily see something like Swords Dance Bullet Punch for the priority, Close Combat Trailblaze being ran. Another new move that Scizor gets this generation is Pounce. Pounce is a new move that Scizor gets this generation. It's, again, 50 base power. It's a bug-type physical move with 100% chance to drop their speed. So you can use Trailblaze, to raise your speed. You can use Pounce to, again, have the stab that you already have because you're a bug-type, and you also get the Technician boost on that too. So it becomes 75 base power, and you're lowering your opponent's speed. I can see this being used in something like VGC or Battle Stadium singles, right? Where you're lowering your opponent and allowing you to do another move before them in the following turn, plus you still have your priority. So while it did lose Roost and Knockoff, and Roost specifically is the biggest thing that Scizor can lose. I paused it for a second and forgot where I left off, but yeah, it might have lost Roost and stuff, and you might be thinking like, oh man, this I can still use Morning Sun because Roost got nerfed to 8 PP this generation instead of 16, and Morning Sun was already 8 PP, so it's fine. It's on Scizor and it's on Scizor anyway, but no, it's not. It doesn't learn. I checked it. I checked all the moves, the egg moves, and everything like that. It doesn't learn Morning Sun. So again, defensively, Scizor got worse, but offensively, Scizor got a lot better. And I'm excited for these buffs. Now, Forretress itself got Body Press. And the way Body Press works is it's based off your defense, right? So if I have max defense Forretress, which is what, 416 if I'm not mistaken? I don't know why I'm bold. I would probably be like Relaxed Nature if I'm running a Forretress or something with like Gyro Ball or anything like that. Or maybe not. Depending. But if I'm doing this, I am attacking with my Body Press, a base 80 fighting type attack off of this 416 defense stat. You couple that with Iron Defense, and Forretress is now a sweeper, right? It can actually sweep instead of just being the typical wall that you see with, you know, Spikes, Rapid Spin, Volt Switch, Gyro Ball, or even lead Forretress with as many Stealth Rock and hazards as possible with Explosion, Custat Berry. Like this is like the old what Forretress used to do type of thing with Sturdy Custat Berry. And but now Forretress has potential to actually beat defoggers as well. I think that's a big thing too, because for instance, I run a set like this, right? And I would run Leftovers and maybe even Special Defensive just because I'm boosting. I run a set like this and I go for Spikes. This isn't Ferrothorn, right? So Ferrothorn, the way it can beat Corviknight is it will spike and then it'll Leech Seed it and knock it off and then beat it 1v1 because it gets immediate recovery back and forth, and Corviknight can't attack it without taking Iron Barb's damage, so it at least annoys the hell out of it. Whereas Forretress, Corviknight can just infinitely defog, whereas Forretress can't really do too much damage to it. It could Volt Switch out, but now in this case, versus Curse Snorlax, versus Corviknight going for defog that's not Iron Defense Body Press themselves, I have this threat, this actual threat. And if you look at Forretress in this generation currently, or at least this is, I don't think Forretress is in regular. I think it looks like it's an RU in National Dex. But if you look at Forretress here, God, these tiers are crazy. Like, this is another mon that got buffed because water types can't burn it with Scald. So you run Special Defensive, potentially, and you take on the, you run Heavy Slam or whatever, Protect or whatever. You run Special Defensive, and you can set up in front of bulky waters and try and break through them like Vaporeon or like Alamola or whatever else is in this generation. So I think it's a pretty big buff for Forretress itself and allows you to use it in different ways. Volcarona lost both Roost and Defog. pretty big nerfs for it. However, it does have Morning Sun in this generation, and because like I said, Roost was nerfed to 8 PP instead of 16, Morning Sun does the exact same thing. In fact, you could even say it's a little bit of a buff, right? Because you use it on Sun and you get even more recovery. But at the same time, if you use it in Rain or try and Roost in Rain, it does less recovery. So it's an interesting move for Volk. I just wanted to mention it here. Obviously, Volcarona having access to Terra Blast in this generation is a buff in itself, because you can decide, do I want to run Terra Blast ground, become a ground type, and allow me to deal with Heatran and Tox effects in one? Do I want to become Terra Blast water and obviously lose my 4x Stealth Rock weakness, and also be able to set up on water types while still retaining Stab with Bug Buzz or Fire move as well, and Quiver Dance up. So Volcarona in general, this generation is buffed because Defog isn't something that was super used on Volk, and it has Morning Sun. So it doesn't need Roost because they're both basically the same thing. And Terra Blast. So it's all right. It's all right. Like Volcarona, I think is still pretty much the same. A different Quiver Dancer this generation. Obviously, we have Masquerain. Now, previously, Masquerain, I always thought Masquerain should be like Bug Water Quiver Dancer, personally, especially because I always used it with Hydro Pump. And you can obviously use Ice Beam, and you can use Bug Buzz, but its best flying attack previously was Air Slash, and now it has access to Hurricane. So Hurricane is a very strong move, and then with Intimidate giving you multiple times to potentially set up. Obviously, you can do Sticky Web things too. I just think it makes its base 100 special attack actually decent, because after a Quiver Dance, that's strong. You're strong, and you have strong moves that you can use. And like this is, I mean, obviously if you miss, it sucks, but like a Hydro Pump for Heatran, Landorus type of thing, right? Bug Buzz is just your stab, and for grass types and whatnot. And then you have Hurricane, just a super strong move. Just adding more to Masquerain's offensive capabilities. And anything that makes a Pokemon better offensively is a buff. This is a buff. I'm hoping that like Masquerain in general is usually a lower tier Pokemon, like very lower tier, very rarely used. But I'm hoping that having access to Hurricane, and it's kind of hard because like Butterfree, for instance, has Hurricane as well, but it also has Compound Eyes, so it has a higher chance of hitting Hurricane. And it also has access to Sleep Powder as well, something that Masquerain does not have. But having access to that, having access to Sticky Web, assuming it still has Sticky Web in this game, is I think just something that it can take advantage of on more offensive ones. And shoot, man, with Terra Blast as well, them Terra Blast double stab Hurricanes are going to hurt if you become a Terra Blast flying type. Though I think with Masquerain, you'd get rid of both bug and flying and become something that, like maybe even fire, potentially, just because fire offensively is really nice since you can actually hit steel types with this set. I could see that happening. So I talked about Kleavor previously in my Hisuian Pokemon Buffs video, but I'm going to talk about it again because it does fall into the bug category. Now I also know how much Sharpness does. I didn't know how much it did back then. So Kleavor doesn't have Steadfast anymore. It has Sharpness. Sharpness is a new ability in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that raises cutting moves to 1.5 times the power. It's pretty crazy because moves like Sacred Sword become stronger than close combat. So it's a really nasty move for this Pokemon, especially because its signature move is Stone Axe. And Stone Axe sets up Stealth Rock, like when you attack with it. So not only is it buffed by Sharpness, and it's a rock type move that's good, it is setting up Stealth Rock while attacking at the same time. They also gave this Pokemon access to U-Turn, which is great, something it didn't have. So I'm very happy because it can do something similar to Scizor and Scyther. Obviously, you know, it's a what is it, a cross evolution, that's what you call it, of Scyther. So very happy. It has U-Turn for the momentum, for choice band sets, for choice scarf sets, for heavy duty boot sets, for even lead sets that I can do too. And it also gets Night Slash and Psycho Cut. Now, I can't spell Psycho, well, in this thing. But Psycho Cut, and I believe also Night Slash, are boosted by Sharpness. I know Psycho Cut for sure is boosted by Sharpness. And Night Slash sounds like a cutting move. So they're boosted by Sharpness, which means 1.5 times the power. So, I mean, you're 1.5 times 70, right? So it becomes 105. That should be 105, right? Yeah, it's a 105 base power move. And it's really good versus Toxapex. Not that your stone move isn't, but offensive sets can still run, like offensive Swords Dance sets could potentially run things like Swords Dance Psycho Cut, or obviously Stone Axe as well. They did give it a little bit of nerf. It has 130 attack now instead of 135, and it has a little buff in its special defense, 75 versus 70. I'm not sure why they ended up making the 5 change. I don't think it makes too much of a difference on this Pokemon, but that does make it, I guess because they wanted to match Scizor, which is still good, right? 394 is still very good, but still a pretty big buff. Being able to get Stealth Dog up, obviously Sharpness is a great ability for this Pokemon. There's a lot of other Pokemon that actually got it too, and it's a fantastic ability. And I'm excited to use this Pokemon. I think I really love, and let me know your thoughts as well. And also, if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you subscribe as well. I'm uploading, you know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content every single day. Tomorrow is the launch date, right? So you can expect from me a moveset video on a Pokemon, probably more discussion stuff as well. And if they're on Pokemon Showdown or Showdown Live too. So you can definitely expect a lot from me. And also, if you guys want to pick up Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I do have Best Buy affiliate links down below. You support me and the channel by using my links. And you don't have to just buy Scarlet and Violet from those links. You can literally buy anything from those links and you support me. But on to the next Pokemon. So we just have 2 more Pokemon to talk about, unless I get into like new Pokemon, which I said I wouldn't do in these videos. But once the stuff is out, I'll be having those discussions. That's going to be a lot of fun. So Vespiquen, or Vespiquen, however you want to say it, has spikes now. I like this. It already had Toxic Spikes this generation, which is a pretty cool buff for it. You can use it in lower tiers. It's not the greatest Pokemon, right? It has good defenses, and now honestly, its offensive are like average. Like they're not terrible. And then there's some fun stuff you can do with like Prankster, Destiny Bond. But having Spike just means it's a lower tier bug that does something different than the other bug flyings, right? So if you look at bug and flying, and you look through that list, none of these Pokemon spike. Literally none of these Pokemon can use, my dog is crying for food, don't worry, she's being fed. None of these Pokemon can use spikes. So while bug flying is pretty bad typing, though on certain Pokemon there are exceptions, like yeah, Mega does it really well with Tinted Lens or Speed Boost sets, and obviously Quiver Dance Pokemon can do differently, and why the hell they give Letterman 35 attack, but it's still cool because it differentiates it. So it can definitely be a lower tier spiker. Obviously it can Toxic Spike as well, assuming it still has it in this generation. And it still has access to, you know, moves like Heal Order, which I'm not sure if Heal Order would be nerfed. I'm assuming it was, because everything else that heals 50 was nerfed in terms of PP. And it can just be an annoying Pokemon with like U-turn. So you can be a pretty decent support mon in lower tiers. I know it's a lower tier Pokemon. Sorry, I just made sure she got fed. But I know that this is a lower tier Pokemon, but it's still different viability than the other ones. And with heavy duty boots, it can just be annoying. Like this set just comes in, you defog with something else, which imagine, like a lot of people lost defog. A lot of people, well, Pokemon people, whatever. They lost defog. So you bring this thing in, even if they do defog, I bring it in, I set it up, I heal order off the damage, and I U-turn out to one of my strong Pokemon that can take advantage of the fact that Spikes is up. Again, this is still assuming it has T-Spike in its arsenal. But Spikes for sure is something it does have, and it's just a good move. Now, last nerf we have is Frosmoth loses Weather Ball. I'm going to be real here. I'm very disappointed in Frosmoth as just a Pokemon. And I don't want to turn this into a rant, but it had potential to be the ice version of Volcarona. It did. Good special attack, has access to Quiver Dance, and Ice is really good offensively. And Bug isn't even that bad offensively because it's decent neutral. It just needed something. It just needed something right here. They could have gave it Earth Power. They could have gave it Aura Sphere. If they gave it Earth Power, though, it probably would have been too good. So I didn't even need that. I just needed like Ancient Power or something that neutral could hit. And Weather Ball provided that. Weather Ball, when you used it in rain, became Weather Ball Water, and it was good for Heatran. When you used it in sun, became Weather Ball Fire, and was good for Ferrothorn and Corviknight. So it was a good move that Frosmoth had that has been used, and I've used it in videos, and my friends have used it in videos, and it's a decent move for Frosmoth, and it worked. It definitely worked. They didn't even give it, and another thing they could have done was give this Pokemon like Roost or Recovery, right? Like it had no recovery, which is what makes it different. Like it has ice scales, so it takes half from special attacks, but it cannot shrug off multiple hits just because of the fact that it never had Roost. And they nerfed it even more by getting rid of its only coverage in Weather Ball. Now, this metagame does have Terra Blast. And if you're playing on Battle Stadium singles, if you're playing in VGC, where Terra Blast will most certainly not be banned, then great. It's a little bit of a buff for Frosmoth. If you're playing on 6v6 singles on Pokemon Showdown, which is the site we're on, we're showing this off, I cannot say that Terra Blast will survive or that Terastallizing will survive. So if it does survive, great. You can Terastallize into a fighting type. in my opinion. I like fighting because it gives you the ability to hit steals. It gets rid of your 4 times weakness to rock. And that's just one of the options. Obviously, water is an option too. But I think fighting or ground is best on this in terms of terrestrializing. But yeah, guys, that's basically all I have for the nerfs and buffs. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you did enjoy, make sure you subscribe. Feel free to check out my Best Buy affiliate link. And I will see you tomorrow with some Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coverage.